Ben Roethlisberger is unquestionably the leader of this team, not just by my standards, by the standards the team recognizes. If our players were smart, they'd listen to him because he's been there. He's done it. I honestly believe it can be a burden on him more often than he would like to admit. He has 52 kids under him. Canty, have the Steelers set a bad precedent with their praise of Ben Roethlisberger?
Well, yeah, but I want to first dive into those comments that Kevin Colbert just said, referring to the other 52 guys on the team as kids.
Yeah.
Them grown-ass men out there, dog.
Thank you.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even understand that. And then when it comes to Big Ben and his criticism of teammates, I'm fine with them keeping that in-house. If he wants to approach guys in the locker room, on the practice field, or even on the sidelines in games, perfectly fine. But when you go on a radio show, when you're doing a weekly hit in Pittsburgh and you're public about your criticism and the mistakes that your teammates have made, yet you don't accept accountability and responsibility for the mistakes that you make yourself, that's what I got a problem with. If you go back to the regular season, remember that interception that he threw at the end of the Denver Broncos game? And he says, yeah, that's not a big deal because who anticipates a defensive tackle dropping in coverage? Like you've got to accept responsibility for that. That's a situation where you stand up as the quarterback knowing your position in the organization. You've got to establish a standard. You've got to set the example for everybody on that team. If you accept accountability as the quarterback, then you force all of your other teammates to be accountable. Big Ben clearly hasn't done that with himself, and I think that's what led to the friction that you've seen with Antonio Brown in the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I just feel like the precedent that GM Kevin Colbert is setting by coming out and making these comments is a misstep, and it explains what's going on with that Antonio Brown situation. And it also explains why this team, with all the talent that they've had this decade, has only gone to one conference championship.
I agree 100% with everything you said. He went way too far. If you want to come out and say Ben is our leader, all the players know he's the leader, he's won 2 Super Bowls, you know, we're behind him, that's fine. He talked about Ben Roethlisberger like you would talk about a coach. And even if you talked about a coach that way, I think players would push back. Because he basically said he's beyond reproach. Right. Don't question him. Don't ask him, you know, question what he's doing is right. Just get in line. Yes, Ben. What do we need to do, Ben? How can we win? That's what he was talking about. And I think even with a coach, players got to feel like at least I can ask about something. I can question. Well, as coach, what I'm seeing out there is this. Why don't we look at, you know, like, so I think he went way too far. And to your point, I want to address the 52 kids. And look, I think there are times as an African-American in this country, because of the history of this country and the oppression, the slavery, the discrimination, and even discrimination that we still encounter today, there are times when a white person can say something without racial intent. Without racist intent. I don't know Kevin Colbert. I'm not calling him a racist. I assume he's not. He's got a black head coach. You work in a field where there are a lot of African Americans. Okay, so I don't think he had any racial intent because obviously a lot of their players are white. But when you most of their players are black. 70% of the NFL is black. When you refer to black men as kids, it rubs me the wrong way because for the greater part of of America's history, there has been a concerted effort to keep black men in a state of perpetual adolescence as boys. We were literally called boys when we were grown men. So, again, I don't think Kevin Colbert meant it that way. I don't think he's even aware of it. But when you call grown men, some of them who have families, who have children, kids, and you even put it in the context of being under a white man, Roethlisberger, and going further, a white guy whose character is far beyond, not beyond reproach, who's had his own issues. Come on. Like, that's how I look at it. And again, I'm not saying anything about Kevin Colbert being a racist, but this is how myself and I think a lot of African Americans look at things like this. When you refer to grown men as kids.
No, see, Chris, you're absolutely right. And it's not necessarily his intent with the message, it's how it's received by the guys in the locker room. And I don't think that's going to be one of those things that guys are going to take the right way. I think this can go sideways in a hurry. And when you couple that with the fact that Ben Roethlisberger hasn't exhibited the leadership traits that you would see from some of the other top-tier quarterbacks like Tom Brady or like a Russell Wilson, that would actually bother you. So, I mean, it goes back to Ben Roethlisberger and how he goes about his business. I mean, the way that he separated himself from the other guys in the locker room creates a strained dynamic. And in the middle of all of this, you have Mike Tomlin, who's done nothing but win division titles since they installed him as the head coach. He's won a Super Bowl. He's never had a losing record in any season. This is an organization, this is a team that expects to be in the playoffs each and every season. But to see all of the things that have cropped up the last couple of years, from Antonio Brown with the Facebook Live video to Le'Veon Bell and the contract stalemate, and now this from Ben Roethlisberger and the friction that he's got with AB, I look at all of these different things and I say this is why a talented team has fallen short of expectations.
How detrimental can this be given the time period? I mean, the assumption is that Le'Veon Bell becomes a free agent, so he may be gone. Antonio Brown, you assume he'll get traded, so maybe you're thinking you can get things back in order. Given the fact it's the off season, you still got some time before minicamp, things like that. What do you think the reaction will be by the team to this, and how much can this challenge that order?
Well, it's going to be hard to put the genie back in the bottle, and you also have to consider the organization's in a tough spot with Ben Roethlisberger's contract, because this is a contract year for him. It's over after 2019. So Art Rooney II has already come out on record and said he wants to extend Big Ben. And so if you're going to give a player more cash, and on top of the comments that the general manager just made, that's just further empowering Ben Roethlisberger to continue to do what he's already done in the past. And so I get a little bit worried about Mike Tomlin being able to reestablish his authority and his voice in that locker room when the general manager has already come out on record and said that the quarterback has the power to even call him out. So in an organization that has had 3 head coaches in the last 50 years, I think that it's Kevin Colbert's responsibility and ownership's responsibility to empower your head coach to be able to take back his locker room. You're probably going to get rid of the distraction of Antonio Brown. They already said they're not coming out and tagging Le'Veon Bell again. So those will be removed from the situation. But I think now that Kevin Colbert has made these comments, they've got some cleaning up to do in order to put Mike Tomlin in a good spot where he can get back to doing what he does best, which is coach this team.
I totally agree, because I think this was an opportunity. When you get rid of Le'Veon and Antonio, this is an opportunity to get back to the Steeler way, where you don't have these distractions, where it's all team-first personalities. But now I think you've messed that up. And I think Kevin Colbert's got a lot of work to do, because, look, you didn't hear any players come out and criticize Antonio Brown. Even as bad as what he did was by skipping out on that last game, they threw out an olive branch at the Pro Bowl. Hey, we want him back. Now, Ben, I just think that the players, you saw where Antonio said that Ben had an owner's mentality. You can see why after comments like this by the GM. So I wonder if, players, they seem to be siding with Antonio, at least in terms of his character and who he is as a person. And I think that this could just divide that locker room a little bit. I don't even know. Maybe Colbert needs to come out and issue not an apology, but some type of another statement, or because
he's got to explain those comments.
If he just says he's got 52 men to lead and we got to get behind him, that's fine. Yeah. But he went way too far.
The Steelers have dealt with tumultuous situations before, and I know it's still very early, but L. Bell's gone. You assume Antonio Brown's gone. What are realistic expectations for this team next season?
Well, this team comes into every season trying to win the division. But when you have a quarterback that's in his late 30s and you're talking about giving him more money, there's only one reason that you're doing that. You're expecting to win a championship. And the knock on the Steelers team, the years prior to the last 2 seasons has been the defense hasn't been able to match what the offense is bringing to the table. But the last 2 seasons, they've had a top 10 defense. So really, this is on Ben Roethlisberger to get this done. If the organization is going to make a financial commitment to him and put him in this type of situation where he's at the top of the hierarchy, he's got to deliver. So I think the pressure has to be on Ben Roethlisberger, because he's shown when you have arguably the best wide receiver in the game and you have arguably the best running back in the game, he hasn't been able to get it done. So I think a lot of what happens for this Steelers organization in the next couple of years is going to be on Big Ben. And if they give him a new contract extension, that means more pressure.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.